And please try and ensure that whatever demo you are coming up with can run on a platform like replit.com. And what I mean by that is you should be able to sort of, ideally, if you can just use Replit for demonstrating your application, that is, I think, the simplest solution. But in case you are developing locally on your own machine, then still please make sure that it is self-contained, meaning that if you send us the code, we should be able to reproduce the environment and run it without having to install additional dependencies. Okay. So this is partly the reason why we also sort of discouraged things like using MySQL or PostgreSQL. I know that some of you had said that, in the DBMS course, you were using Postgres, but why are we using SQLite? Well, the DBMS course is trying to teach you properties of really strong database systems, right? And Postgres is an excellent example of that, right? It has very strong academic groundings, and it allows you to sort of show many of the concepts and all in ways that may not be possible with other DBs. For our purposes, SQLite is fine. And the simple reason is that, SQLite is much easier to implement because you essentially are just carrying the database along with you. Okay. One request, anybody who's not, if you don't have a question, please mute your mics. Okay. I think there is some background sound coming in out here. Okay, thanks. So yes, so like I was saying, PostgreSQL is potentially, it has more features, but that's not really what we are looking at from the point of view of the project. Okay, so the simple way to look at it would be ultimately, okay, can I give this demonstration on a simple platform? Okay. If it turns out that whatever, some other CSS or whatever it is that you plan to use, as long as it does not add too much in terms of installation and setup and so on, we are okay with it. Okay. One thing is, I would definitely like to see that, you apply some nice styling and make the application also look nice. But on the other hand, we will not be grading you on that. In other words, aesthetics is not something that we will be giving specific marks to in terms of at least the basic requirement. On the other hand, what we are trying to do is, at least which are the nice projects. Maybe we would like to showcase some of them and present them to others saying, okay, look, this would have been, this is a nice design. So these are worth emulating, so to say, right? And sort of try to have see which are the best projects, both in terms of features as well as styling, and bring those out in some sense. Okay. But I understand that that is highly subjective, and therefore that will not really be contributing to your marks as such. Okay. So moving forward, let's look at the basic terminology and concepts over here as far as the project is concerned. What is a flashcard? Like I said, it's used for memory training when you want to memorize certain concepts. Okay. And it's possible that a user can have multiple decks, right? So a deck is a terminology which basically says it's a collection of related cards. Okay. So I might have a deck of cards that essentially is for learning Tamil. I might have another deck of cards for learning Hindi. I might have another deck of cards for learning HTML. If you go onto YouTube, you'll find that there are a whole lot of people who use this for medical college related, information. Like I said, there are a lot of things that need to be memorized there, Latin terms and so on. And so at any given point in time, you are using one deck, right? You don't want to sort of mix and match decks because that will sort of confuse the user when they are trying to practice. Now, what does a card itself look like? A card has a front and a back, okay? And the front is basically the part of the flashcard that's initially shown during the review process, okay? And the back will have something which you are expected to know about what was displayed on front, okay? For a language, it might be very simple. It might just be the meaning of the word that was shown in front. But, you could have much more complicated flashcards. Flashcards could have like fairly large amounts of information if necessary on them, right? And the whole idea is that, yes, you are learning something. And the moment I see the front, does this trigger a certain part of your memory and say, okay, yeah, these are all the concepts that I really need to know with regard to this particular word or term or sentence that is shown on the front of the card. Okay. So as far as a flashcard application is concerned, you will also need some logic. which sort of tracks your progress over time and decides which cards need to be reviewed. Okay, so this is basically how flashcards are used. Next slide. So this is an example. Let's say that you're trying to learn Hindi, right? The question view might basically show the word cat, okay? And the review view, which means that it shows both the front and back, will show you the front, of course, because you still need to know the word for which you are looking at it. And it also shows the word Billy, right? So basically saying that, okay, this is the Hindi word for cat, right? Now, the point is, if this was a physical flashcard, then you are never going to be looking at both the front and the back simultaneously. But well, that's part of the advantage of using a computer system, right? I mean, it can also show you the front and the back. Now, having said that, this is also one place where you might want to sort of make it look more fancy. You might say that, okay, it actually looks physically like a card. And when you say, okay, show me the reverse, it does some animation that flips it over and so on. Now, while that's fine, that's a choice that you can make. I would suggest that maybe at least for this assignment, this project, try and avoid making it too fancy, because such things can sometimes distract from the actual purpose of what you're trying to do, right? And very often, one of the problems that I've found with many applications is that they sort of go overboard with trying to make things look fancy or look cool, and they lose basic functionality, right? You sort of start getting lost in this thing, and you're not able to concentrate on the cards themselves. So if you find a simple way of doing this, then great, go ahead. But otherwise, just keep it simple. Just have even one word displayed, and the next thing basically, just displays both in a text box or something like that. That should be fine. Okay. All right. So this is an example. Now, I want to mention a few things about the core functionality that we are looking at, right? In other words, how will the grading be done? Like I told you, the grading will basically be on the basis of Viva. And there are a few base requirements that we absolutely expect that you will be able to implement. Okay. One of them is some form of user login. Yeah, I think you can go on to the next slide, Abhishek. Yeah, so the user login, right? When I say user login, what we are basically looking for is some minimal thing that expects you to log in, right? So I'm not particularly concerned about whether you use a strong authentication system or how exactly the passwords are stored and so on, right? You could, of course, use something like Flask login. That's perfectly fine. But whether you sort of encrypt passwords using a particular hash, or whether you provide safety and security mechanisms and so on, we are not really going to be focusing too much on that. Okay, so we are just so you could use a proper login framework like Flask login, or pretty much just use a field where a person enters a username, and you don't even ask for a password. It just sort of says, okay, fine. You say you are Nitin, I'll believe that you are Nitin, and go ahead and show you the DEX corresponding to Nitin, right? What this means is, of course, that you need to, in your database, you need to have a suitable model that describes how the user is implemented. So what is the information you're collecting about the user and so on. These things are up to you, right? We are not sort of specifying that this is what the user model should contain and so on. That you can use, that you can define on your own. It has to be documented. That's the important thing. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so the next bit of core functionality, if I'm using a flashcard application, then what I would expect to see is once I log in, I will see a list of the DEX that are present in the system, or at least the DEX that I have access to. Okay, so you could add that functionality where you say that, one particular user has only a specific DEX and so on. Yeah, sorry, somebody had raised a hand. Kumar.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Yeah.
I want to ask in the previous the question about the login. So login, we are going to only use login or with sign up?
Like I said, that's up to you. All that we are looking for is that there should be some form of a user model. Now, okay. You could pre-populate with users and say this is user 1, user 2, right? And basically say, okay, this is what the user screen looks like, and this is where the user would basically say, okay, this is how I'm going to log in, right?
So we can manually put the username, password in the database.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Right? We are not sort of looking for how do you allow people to sign up and so on. You might at some point just decide that you're going to use Google logins or something, but I'm not
Okay.
expecting any of that. That's not core requirement. That's up to you.
And yes, I got it. And one more thing, in the previous slide, he was talking about that card. When
Yes.
we memorize that and go, we track the progress. So
Yes.
what type of, how much condition we are looking for this
Oh,
project?
I mean, that's entirely up to you, right? So if you decide that the system is just going to show the cards in the order in which they are present in the deck, I'm perfectly fine with that. Okay. So because the problem is, this flashcards, if you look at it, you go online and search, and there is like a lot of theory and lot of research has been done on what is the optimum order in which you need to present flashcards. Okay.
Yes.
So if we start getting into that, then that becomes I mean, I have no interest in sort of making that a requirement of the project. As far as this project is concerned, even if you just pick them out in the order in which they are present, that is sufficient. Having said that, like I said, we will be trying to sort of put up things which are, nicely implemented projects, right? We would like to sort of showcase some of those, hopefully at the end. And there, if you can say that, you have implemented some specific kind of logic or why you feel that this way of doing it could be useful to others, that would be a nice observation. But it definitely does not impact what we are looking for from the grading point of view.
So, sir, one more thing here.
Yeah.
That whenever suppose we use some particular card, so
Yes.
later user can know that about this card, no, if they want to see his progress.
Yes.
So there's something will be that related to that card. Okay, that card he knows up to that much %.
Correct. So, you could do that. So so when I say that, see, okay, now if you look at this slide, which is on the screen now, right, saying core dashboard, the
Yes.
kind of information that I would like you to track about each card is each time that a card is displayed, right, you basically sort of track some information saying that, okay, this is the last time that it was shown, and give the user an option to sort of say, okay, was this easy? Was it hard? Something like that. Okay. So, I mean, I know, I mean, I'm not expecting all of you to install and use this thing, but that AnkiWeb.net, for example, is, I'm not sure if we had put the link for that in this PPT, but AnkiWeb is one of those, it's a very nice flashcard application. In fact, AnkiWeb is open source, right? So in principle, you can go and implement the entire thing if you want to. Luckily, it's not in Flask, so it doesn't qualify as your project. You can just pick it up and give it over here. But if you want to implement something that is in fact compatible with AnkiWeb, that would be a very nice thing to do. But my point is, what AnkiWeb does, for example, is for each card, it contains some information saying, okay, this was the number of times this card has been shown. This was the last time that it was shown. This was the rating that the user gave on it each time. Did they find it hard? Did they find it easy? And so on. Okay. And it sort of retains some kind of an average score for each card. Okay. So that part of it, once again, is not, I'm not specifying exactly what is the scoring that you need to use, but the fact that you need to have this kind of a scoring mechanism is something that you need to keep in mind. So how do you go about storing something of that sort inside the card model or the deck model?
I got it, sir. And one problem is here. Suppose we are one particular card is there, and I keep that information, and that moment we go to the next card. So whenever we go to the next card, before going next card, we sort of the information or we are going to save in the database. So that is happening every time I'm hitting the server, or it is the something JavaScript or the asynchronous way we have to do.
No, so I mean, the way that I would think about something like this is, see, the display and would be something like, first I would put up one screen saying cat, okay? And there will be one button over there saying show answer. Okay. So when you click on show answer, it basically shows you the back side of that card, what is written on the back. And you say, okay, it was Billy. So yes, I knew this. And after showing you the back of the card, it also shows you two or three options, right? One saying like, yes, this was easy. The other one saying that this was hard, or maybe one of them saying, I need this to be reviewed again, something like that. Right? You could look at some 2-3 different options. Just easy and hard is also sufficient. Okay. So let's say I click on easy. It will basically change the internal. So when I click on easy, what will happen is some controller will be called, which will go into the database and update the score for this cat card to be, updated by easy, and then it will select a new card and display it immediately.
So that all these thing I can go server so we don't
I mean, just like, don't bother with JavaScript at all. You don't have to use any JavaScript at all over here. You can just do it with each link, right? See, how do we develop the Flask application so far? Each URL, which is there as a link, right, on the page, literally I have to click on the link in order to activate some functionality on the server, right? So it could either be a button or it could be a href link. Either one of those is fine.
Okay, so every the thing is that, so but question is here, suppose that so once I click on the, suppose one card has came and 2-3 options there with the card, so we are clicking only one option and it's going back to the server, and then after that new card is coming.
Correct.
That's the way. So
yes.
in that way I can able to save only one information at a time.
You will save information. See, you are calling a controller with some information. So, I mean, you can even think of it as being a controller with, card number flash. Yeah, it could be, not a multi-select even. I mean, I would just put like 3 links at the bottom of the screen, or 2 links at the bottom of the screen, easy and hard, right? One link would be card number / easy. The other would be card number / hard, or something like that, right? And I mean, the URL corresponding to those. Now, what will happen is the controller will basically say something like it would be an update card information / card number / easy, right? Which basically says, okay, for this card number, I need to update the score so that it is modified as easy now. And after that, it does a redirect to the page that displays a new card.
And one more thing, sir, here. Suppose we did updated that card. And same card display the next time. So what is going to it show?
It's fine, right? I mean, right now we don't care. So that's part of, what would happen if you wanted to make sure that, this is not, and if you just pick a card at random each time, there is definitely a chance that, like you said, it might show the same card again. Okay.
So yes, sir, the question was there. So once suppose cat is there and it is the easy and hard. So I selected the easy one. Okay. After some time cat is coming. So the moment cat is coming, so is that 2 link is again activated, or that?
Yes. So each time it shows the thing, it should just show exactly the same options, easy and hard, right? Because it might be that you remember it one time, but by tomorrow again you have forgotten and you find it hard or something like that.
So, okay. So do we need to show that already I selected the easy in the earlier? So should I show that it is already selected as easy on the time?
Up to you. All this is your choice essentially. If you look at how flashcards work, they usually don't show that information. They don't tell you whether last time you saw it, you found it easy or not. They just show you the front and nothing else. And then after you sort of say, okay, show me the answer, you get to choose whether, and it might show you some information saying that, okay, if you find this easy, then it can be done later, something like that.
So one question here, sir. What is the meaning of putting the easy in the database if I don't use the information that again?
No. Look, okay, there is a difference between what is required for the project and what is required for actually a good flashcard application.
Yeah. Both.
So I'm telling you that, right now only what you need to do for the project. You just store the information. You tell us how you can store the information. Okay. How you make use of it is your choice later.
Now it's clear, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to only that store. I have to show that I stored already. No need
to. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Okay. That's clear.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe we can move on to the next question. Sorry. Wait. There are a couple more questions. Kumar, if you can lower hand, and once you are finished with the question, it will be good if you can lower the hand. Thanks. Yeah, can we continue to the question session at the end as planned earlier? I mean, there isn't really much to give in the presentation. I can walk through the rest of it quickly, but yeah, sure, we can do that. And yeah, I think a couple of the other questions, like Harshita has mentioned, AnkiWeb.net is a very good example. That's basically what I had in mind when I was, creating this problem statement. the recording link, Abhishek, I think, that has already been shared, I believe, with the students.
Yeah, it is live on YouTube. You can watch the recorded lecture after the session gets over.
Okay, so, there are a couple of other questions. Maybe we can just go through those as well. Param?
Yes, sir. So I had just a single doubt about the login part. You said that it is not necessary to have like a sign up and thing, but so is it okay if we just keep a record of login and password in the backend and then provide those like a couple of those in the documentation so that while testing on your side, you know the login credentials?
Yeah. I think that's perfectly
that will be
fine.
absolutely fine, right?
Correct. So in fact, you might have seen that there are some applications where they allow you to run a demo. They might have a demo that is set up that is already there online. And in fact, over there, even on the front login page itself, it just shows you that, you can log in as a user/user or something of that sort. But yeah, you create a couple of different users. You in your documentation, you say these are the usernames that you can use. That's perfectly fine. Yeah. No need for sign up and so on.
Thank you, sir.
Next, Cabsoft. I don't know.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, is it possible to share a video explaining how the interface will look like? Because as we move on implementing this, we may face new problems.
No, see, like I told you, that's part of the thing, right? I don't want to sort of say this is the only way you can do it. As I and others have pointed out, AnkiWeb.net is a good example. So I would actually suggest you just go take a look at that, right? See what their interface looks like for user management, for deck management, for review. And if you have a doubt, just use that approach.
Sir, what I'm especially bothered about is that as multi-language support is to be provided.
Yeah.
So how it is to be done means, do we need to we shall have some knowledge about that language as well. Hindi, Marathi, and English, as that is what my native language is. So I will be comfortable with that. But trying any other language and
no. See, I don't understand Marathi, for example, right? So if you put up a card with Marathi on it, I won't be able to know whether what you're saying is correct or not. Yes. But that's not what I'm checking. I'm basically seeing whether it sort of shows the front and the back, and that's pretty much all that there is to it, right? So if your cards are accurate, then yeah, good. But even if you say cat is Ghoda, I'm not going to argue about it.
Okay, sir. And sir, how many languages are minimum expected?
Just 2 is fine, right? English and another language. Yeah, see, the reason I'm saying language is partly, because we have discussed things like UTF-8 and so on, right?
Yes, sir.
And as long as you have designed your sort of templates and things properly, they will just work. So in fact, even this presentation that I showed over here, there was no real problem with it. It should just work out of the box without any significant changes from your side. If you do run into any difficulties, see, worst case, I will say that if you are running into problems with the language, then drop the multi-language, right? It's not a sort of showstopper over here. Make sure that the rest of your functionality is okay.
Okay, sir, sure. Yeah. Thank you, sir. That was the point I wanted to discuss. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks.
Yeah. Next question, Cherian.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, in the presentation, there was a mention of using APIs also.
Yeah.
So should we provide API access to do CRUD operations on the card and deck? And
ideally, yes, that is precisely what I would like to see, right? Because, so there are a couple of different ways in which APIs can be defined over here. One is, of course, the CRUD for the cards and the decks, because, I have mentioned that as far as deck management is concerned, you should be able to add cards and so on, right? So CRUD API for the deck, I think, would be a good thing to have. There could be other API calls as well, something, for example, to update the complexity of a card or, things of that sort, right? Or randomizing a deck, or I don't know, and maybe even for retrieving a score, things of that sort. Those are sort of left to you. I would like to see how you go about defining the APIs for such things. And then, you implement your front-end functionality, which is basically the Jinja templates with the appropriate links. And you can just go with that.
I just want to know, should the front end interact with the API, or is it to be done in some other way?
See, in this particular course, actually, the way that we did it was, we brought in APIs, but we did not sort of tightly tie in front ends with APIs. Okay, so just sort of heads up, the way that we are looking at MAD 2, which is the next course, is that you will definitely be sort of looking at front ends and APIs and how a front end interacts with an API. Part of what we are looking at over here is, over here, if you can show that yes, it interacts with the API, then that's fine. But no, I'm not going to have that requirement, because I know that, even in the assignments that we gave, we did not sort of enforce the API side of things. So yeah, have an API for CRUD and so on. But if the front end sort of interacts with it directly in a different way, then we are still okay with that, as long as you can show how it is being done. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, but how do I show the proctor who's testing this, the functionality of the API? I can show the functionality of the front end. I can show the code also, but for the API,
see, there are two things. Like I said, you will also have to have your basic document, which sort of says what has been implemented. And in that, you need to say which APIs you have implemented, and you can sort of say, okay, an access to this endpoint will give you this kind of a response. So that would be part of the demo, where you just basically say, I have an API which is implemented, let's say for cards, and this particular thing is the the read API for a card. This is how it will look, or an update API for a card. This is how it will. You have a couple of sort of examples that you can show. That's basically it.
Okay, sir. So this will be, I will have to write two separate things, and if I'm demonstrating it on Replit, I will have to run two Replit instances, one for the API and one for the app.
Okay. Oh, sorry. So you are saying that you are going to have the API completely distinct from the app itself. Is there any reason for
that is what I understood from the slides that you shared.
No. Ideally, I would like to say that the API itself is part of the same app. I don't want two implementations over here. Right.
Okay.
So, what I meant when I said that, you might not use the API for the front end is you might have other functions or other routes within your same application that directly go and, call some controllers. Okay. But in the same app, you can also have maybe, mounted under /API or something like that. The entire API would be there in order to do.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Something like that.
And
yeah. Don't create
API,
two different solutions, just one.
Okay. And API doesn't have to be under the login constraint, no?
Again, that's up to you. Certain APIs could be restricted, but no, in this case, don't bother about that. It need not be under the login constraint.
I don't think we want that.
API, correct. API would require API keys and things of that sort. So no, the API can be open without login. That's fine.
Another doubt, sorry for asking so many questions. This is something I asked on Discourse as a reply. Each card is tied to a user, or is that independent?
No, I might, for example, have a shared deck also. Right. But what you're saying is actually correct in the sense that it at least needs to keep track of what was the rating given by each user. So I will actually need to have probably a separate table where the relationship between a card and a user gets stored. I can have cards that are shared across users, but I will need to have something which stores the information between a user and a card.
Okay. One more thing is, can a card be present in more than one deck?
Yes, possible.
Okay.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let me just think about that and get back. My instinctive answer is to say yes, but if it turns out that is going to complicate matters, I don't think it will complicate matters. I think it should be straightforward to implement. But if there is a reason why you feel that it will complicate matters, you can choose to omit that. Just sort of specify that in your documentation, saying that if I want to have cat in 2 decks, I have to create 2 cat cards. That's all right. So that's a possibility.
With the given with the given information, I can think of it only as doing it with 6 tables in the database. 1 for user, 1 for card, 1 for deck, and 3 for the relationships.
I mean, I think, go and think it through. I mean, I'm not getting into the discussion of how that looks. That's part of what you need to think about.
Thank you. That's
yeah. All right. Okay. Harshit.
Yeah, hello, sir. So actually, we are talking about docs from a long time. So I'm just asking how the doc should look like. If you can give a pointer to this is some kind of a format that your document should be like, or this is the kind of things you should specify in your document like that.
Okay, we'll put together something like a kind of template that you can use. But you know, I mean, I'm like I said, you know, the documentation I'm looking at is very brief. It's like 2 pages or so, right? So it's not like you go into a whole lot of detail. Your code itself should have certain documentation in the sense that, you know, it should specify what is being done. If the code is written sufficiently clearly, and you know, you're using things like the regular structure, you know, for create and CRUD API, things of that sort, you don't even need to document those, right? Because they are obvious. So documentation need not be long or verbose. It basically needs to be, if there is something non-standard or anything new that you are doing over here, those things need to be brought out. That's all.
Also, is it mandatory?
Is what mandatory? Documentation? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I definitely need at least a 2-page document, meaning that, you know, there should be something that we can review later to sort of see, okay. In other words, the person who's conducting the Viva should be able to look at this document before they talk to you.
Okay, and also about that open API should we write that also?
Yeah, I mean, see, these are all concepts that you have sort of you know, learned in the course. So I would same thing, like I said, when you're implementing the API, then go about using it the same way.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. There was one more question. Does it have to be language flashcards or any kind of flashcard? Any kind is fine, right? I mean, see, I had mentioned language and I had mentioned multiple languages, but you know, potentially I can see that, yeah, you can run into difficulties with having different language sets and so on, but I don't think so. You know, it should be fairly straightforward. And in fact, the reason for mentioning languages is simply so that you also get the experience of storing different languages in a database and, you know, displaying it on a screen and so on. But yeah, if you choose to have a different kind of flashcard, I'm fine with that. You know, it just has a front and it has a back, and that's basically all there is to it. Okay. All right. So getting back to the, you know, core functionality, right? Like I said, so we had a login and we had a dashboard, and then there is the review. So what happens in a review is, let's say that I pick a deck, okay, and as part of that deck, it now starts showing me options, right? So let's say that it's the Hindi to English or something like that. It starts showing me words one by one, flashcards one by one, and so the display would pretty much look like this. The first time around, it would just show me the word and one link at the bottom saying, show me the answer. Okay. And when you click on show me the answer, it will show the back of the card and give you options, easy and difficult. Okay. And depending on which one you select, it will go in, you know, update the database with a score and then show you a new card. Now, how do you select cards to display? The simplest option is random. Okay, you just pick a card at random from the deck and display it. Now, if you look at something like Anki, it does something much more complicated. It uses something called a spaced repetition algorithm, right? Where what it does is it actually goes through and says, what was the last time that you reviewed this? How many days ago did you review it? What was the score that you gave it at that time? And based on that, it says, okay, you know, the ones that you found more difficult have to be shown more often. But as you find things easier and easier, it sort of increases the duration between repeating the cards. Now, I'm not looking for any of that, right? I mean, that's, if you do something of that sort, great, but you know, it's definitely not part of the core requirement. Yeah, okay, next slide. This is review and, you know, deck management. So deck management is primarily where the CRUD part of it comes. Okay, so you should be able to do CRUD on a deck and CRUD on cards, where you basically say that I will add new cards to a deck and so on. Okay. Yeah, over here I had mentioned that, deck storage should handle multiple languages. Like I said, this is definitely something that we would like to see. And more than anything else, it's just to, for yourself to have that level of comfort that, whatever you are implementing can easily handle multiple languages. But if you are having difficulty with it and, somehow it's not displaying properly or something of that sort, we can even, it won't be considered a showstopper, right? Your project will still be evaluated irrespective of that. So yeah, like I said, export, import, and so on, those are clearly sort of advanced functionality. For that, you need to even have some kind of you need to define the format in which you will save a deck, save a card. How will you export it? How will you import it? So, that's not required. If you do implement something of that sort, once again, nice functionality, not part of your grade. Okay, next. Yeah, so the other thing, like I said, these are like strongly recommended and will be considered as part of the grading thing, which is to have an API for interaction with the decks, the CRUD on deck and individual cards, and additional APIs to retrieve scores or any other things that you can think of, right? So this is partly left open. I'm not specifying it because I expect people to sort of think along these lines and see what are the parts that need to get implemented. And the next is, of course, validation, right? Well, the way that I have described it, at least for the actual flashcard review, there isn't much validation. You're just clicking on links. But during CRUD, for example, you will have like, some kind of forms, right? And you need to ensure that they are validated both on the front end to some extent, if possible, but definitely on the back end before storing in the database, right? Now, I'm not looking at specific security related issues. We will sort of we have talked about security in the course, right? And things like, for example, how you can do SQL injection and so on. We did not get deep into that because, that's a whole different course in itself. But there are some sort of best practices that we had mentioned, even in terms of using, the Flask, SQL Alchemy calls and so on, which will sort of reduce the chances of some badly malformed queries going to the database. Okay, so those kind of things, yes, we would like to see as well. So like I said, these are, I'm putting it as recommended and not as core, simply because, the other things are sort of, if you don't have one of the previous functionalities, it means your application is basically broken. There's something wrong. But if you don't have validation, then it's not broken. You can still demo a complete application, but there are some issues with it. Having said that, we do want to see that you have implemented validation as well. Is validation going to be covered in a screencast soon? Abhishek, I think some of that was already done. Do you know?
Correct. Yeah, JavaScript tutorial has already been up.
Yeah, it's, no, JavaScript is more for the front end validation. I think the back end, see, actually, when I'm saying validation, okay, did we have anything for the SQL Alchemy? What it does for validation, or it just does a validation automatically on its own?
No, on backend, we haven't done much.
Okay, let me just, think about that and get back to you.
I think what we are not specifically mentioned validations, but we have mentioned that it can throw an error. You have to catch an error and show it to the user.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, James. Thanks for talking. Yeah, so
basically, exceptions are raised, and it's left to the user to catch them and show it to the front end user the way they want. Yeah, that is mentioned.
Right. Yeah, that's basically what we are expecting. So just the minimum level of validation. Okay, next slide. Yeah, and finally, we are like talking completely optional in the sense that how does your application look, right? What kind of styling, fonts, colors, sizes, animations, anything that you want. Having said all that, strong recommendation, please try and keep it simple. Okay. And like I said, the reason I'm repeatedly stressing on this, keep it simple, is because there are people conducting the Viva who have to see a large number of different projects, right? And if your project, you might think that it looks very nice and, all these animations make it look great. But the point is they might end up missing out on basic functionality, and that will actually count against you. Okay, so we are not looking for the fancy things over here, although we would definitely like to sort of, if you have some of those, then great. I'm not discouraging those, but it should not be at the cost of basic functionality. Okay, like I said, a proper login system, you could even take this as far as including like Google OAuth login and say that people with the online degree.IITM domain login can connect and so on, right? But all that is not even covered in any detail in the course. So we are not expecting that level. But if you have a proper login system and in fact, maybe you can have an admin who's allowed to sort of move decks around and change things around, whereas you have a user who can only sort of see decks and not create things. All interesting functionality, not part of the core requirement. Okay. And of course, I mean, the real cool thing would be, can you ultimately get it compatible with Anki Web and make in fact, maybe a complete new interface to it or something of that sort. Why would you want to? That's a different story, but maybe you have a better way of looking at something, right? But yeah, all these, like I said, are completely optional. They are not going to be part of what is graded, but if you can sort of showcase any of this, we would be very happy to see it. That's basically. Okay, is that it? Any more slides? Yeah, so, the evaluation, like I said, the report is not more than 2 pages. It should be a single PDF file. We will give a kind of template saying what are the headings at least that we expect in the report, but that's basically it. The main thing that we are looking at is, can you sort of describe the models and the overall system? I'm sort of insisting on this 2 pages. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's actually harder to write a 2-page document than a 10-page document for something like this. Okay. When you're writing it in 2 pages, you need to make sure that you are not just sort of pasting the entire code in there and saying, okay, go read the code. You have to make sure that whatever you're writing is clear and actually describes what is important about your implementation. Okay. All code has to be submitted on the portal. I mean, it will not be part of the auto evaluation or anything. It will just be something where you submit your code, right? And we should be able to then take it from that, whatever you have submitted. And there should be a README file that gives us sufficient information to actually run it ourselves if we need to. Okay. And this is partly why I'm also saying, please just use something like SQLite for the database, right? So that it's sort of self-contained and we can run it ourselves without having to install any new things. One other thing, we'll also give out a little bit more detail about how to, about possible things that you can use for recording the video. But we would like to see a brief 2 to 3 minutes, not more than 3 minutes video explaining how you approach the problem, right? Basically, what have you implemented? It should basically cover things like, okay, you don't have to go over the problem statement from scratch because everybody knows the problem statement. But what you should be able to say is, this is what your models look like. This is any API or anything else that you have implemented. And this is a brief demo of some of the basic functionality, right? And the idea is that you can pre-record this so that that demo is sort of clear to you before you enter the Viva, right? So that you can make sure that there's no hurry during the Viva, and you don't, maybe there's a audio problem or something of that sort, and you lose some time. Because of that, it shouldn't be that you are unable to display something or unable to demonstrate something properly. So please pre-record this video. There are any number of simple ways of doing it. We'll also give some suggestions on how you can do that. But yeah, it should not longer than 3 minutes. That's one thing you have to ensure. And lastly, the evaluation itself will be done with a Viva. The person will be looking at the video that you have got either during the Viva or just before the Viva. But in any case, you are also expected to be ready with a demo where you'll probably be asked to sort of make some changes live and say, okay, maybe how would you modify some part of your display or modify some functionality in one particular controller, something of that sort. If you are asked, you should be able to point at the appropriate place and say, okay, these are the changes, and actually make it and show that it runs there. Okay. And the Viva will also include some questions that are unrelated to the project, but are general relevance of the course. So that's sort of a more summary Viva for the entire course than anything else. So yeah, I mean, this last part, like I said, this is a live document, just like the HTML5 specification, right? So we will keep updating it with more information as we proceed. Okay. The problem statement can be considered at this point to be frozen. So yeah, you can just remove that line. As of now, problem statement itself is frozen. The only thing that we'll be changing is maybe some specific details on what you need to do, right? And the submission is as a single zip file. Of course, there are a couple of things. There is also a PDF and video that needs to be submitted. Whether you put everything together in one, that we will get back to you. Okay. And yeah, the last date for submissions is 28th November, right? And this is a sort of hard deadline because of the scheduling of the Vivas and so on. The dates for the Viva, they start from 1st December. We are trying to put together a sort of some set of choices for the dates so that you can also have some degree of choice, but we cannot guarantee that you will get complete freedom over when to schedule your Viva. 5th, there's an exam. Really? Okay, I didn't know that. All right, so we'll have to take that into account and see how we can schedule the Vivas. But yeah, I mean, we are coordinating this with the entire online degree team, so we'll try and make sure that there are no conflicts anywhere on this. Okay, so that's basically it from my side. Tej, is there anything you wanted to add?
Nothing, actually.
Okay. Any other questions? Happy to take it.
So I just had one question.
Sure. Go ahead.
I during the 5th week lab assignment, I was just having some trouble with redirection in general, like redirecting to another page inside Replit for some reason, and I wasn't able to find what the problem was because it worked when I was running the whole program on my local machine, but within Replit it was giving me some trouble. So I mean, I'm just worried if that could be an issue finally when we present.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think if you can,
yeah,
if you are having that, it would be good if you can share that. Yeah, maybe post it on the discourse, and Abhishek and the others are. I think generally they are very responsive on discourse. They should be able to take a look at it and also help you with that. I mean, on Replit, you might want to share the Replit thing with one of them, but yeah, they can sort of guide you on that. See, the thing is, if you finally need to give the demo from your local machine, that will be okay. The main thing that we are looking for is at some point we should be able to run your code, right? Because and the worst case scenario is that you give us a version of the code that doesn't work and then you demonstrate something else, right? Or you give us something, and I'm not saying that anyone is going to sort of do that or problem over here, but we don't want to sort of have to deal with that kind of scenario. If there is some the absolute worst case scenario, if it turns out that it's not working on Replit and you have to give the demo on your local machine, we will take that into account.
Okay.
As long as we can get a clear picture of why it's not working on Replit.
Okay, understood. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yes, there are a couple of more hands raised. So yeah, Cherian, go ahead.
So regarding the video, should it be a screencast, 2 or 3 minute screencast?
Yes. Yeah, that's basically what we are looking for. Something like a 2 to 3 minute screencast that sort of says, okay, this is the problem, and yeah, a demo of. Yeah.
And one more quick question regarding validation. Since we are accepting other languages, how do we go about that?
So I think in your case, the validations will be very minimal, right? You're not going to validate, don't add Hindi. For example, most probably the validation would be the deck title should be present, for example. That's a validation, right? And that could be valid for any language, whether you're doing Hindi or English. Or let's say slide content should not be empty. That's still valid whether you're doing the slide in English or Hindi. So, it should matter whether you're doing languages.
Correct. Yeah. So, just to be clear, exactly what they said, when we say validation, we are looking for basic things like, are there empty fields or are there, so you can't really say, are there illegal characters and things of that sort, except for, there are some characters that can cause problems with the SQL itself. So SQL has some limitations on what it can accept. But apart from that, let's say that you say you're creating a deck in Hindi, but you actually type in something in Tamil. We are not expecting that to be validated. That's not something reasonable. So that's. Does that sound?
Yeah,
okay?
I was mainly concerned about the harmful characters.
So
yeah,
generally they're harmful characters when you try to insert using SQL Alchemy. It will try to throw an error. Then you can show the error. But most of the times, the SQL Alchemy will do encoding and save it, so it shouldn't even matter. When it comes back to show it on the front end, you will have to do a proper escaping of the HTML characters, which is why you should use actually ideally Jinja will take care of it unless you do something extra for it to not to take care of it. So ideally it should work even without you putting any extra effort. So unless you tell Jinja no present raw characters, it will actually do HTML encoding and present to the user. So it shouldn't cause any harm.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so I guess, more than anything else, as long as you are using Jinja and so on, you should be reasonably safe. But in case you decide to, write your own HTML, raw HTML, or, create, which I would not really recommend, because, the whole point of this course was we are giving you certain things that we recommend. It's not that, Flask and Jinja are the only ways to develop apps, not at all, right? Which is why I'm sort of leaving it open, saying that if you want to make a few changes here and there, you can, but we are strongly recommending that you use these. In case you are making changes, or making some other modifications like they said, then you need to watch out and ensure that, validations and so on are taken care of. Okay. Yeah. Next, Pooja.
Yes, my question is similar to the previous one. So is it really compulsory that we use this different script if you want to use this translation language? Like, is it really necessary we use Hindi letters or some other language letters?
No, like I told you, if there is some specific thing that you are finding it difficult to use or something of that sort, then we are not going to insist on that, because I think that takes away a little bit from the focus of the project. Having said that, I would strongly encourage you to try it, because it's actually very straightforward. You just put in the Hindi thing and pretty much at this point, I think browsers and systems just work. So it's also a good experience to make sure that it is working properly.
Yeah, definitely. I'll try that, but just in case. Yes.
Yeah, if there is, one of the other things I would actually like to say is in the documentation that you finally provide, please put these things down. What are any difficulties that you faced during the project? Right. So in particular, if you find that, something is not displaying properly, or, something else could not be implemented in the way that you expect, please document those. It's not that, we are going to cut marks for those. In fact, if you can clearly document it, that would be considered a good answer to, whatever was required over there, and sort of say what you have done to try and find a solution. But, in spite of that, you weren't able to solve it. That's fine. I think that's actually a good way of answering something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one thing to notice is actually we want to know what you learned and what you're trying to practice. And I think this whole Viva and the things are not there to cut your marks. Are there to see what you learned and encourage you to do more learning than the other way. And marks happens to be like one side effect.
Exactly. I think that's just perfect, right? That's exactly what we would like to convey over here. So, just keep that in mind. Like they said, the Viva purpose is not to sort of put pressure on you, or, make it that, okay, you are going to lose marks because you didn't answer something. If you are not able to implement something, but you are able to tell us what you tried and why you were not able to do it, I think that's more valuable than sort of, if everything just works. Okay. Yeah. Sachin.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, my question was related to APIs. Do we need to use APIs in our core functionality, or these are extra things
No,
that
see,
we need
so
to implement?
yeah, like I said, see, we have APIs and validation are things that we have covered in this course. So what I meant by API is not part of core functionality is you can implement, your controllers and things in a certain way that directly go through and work without using an API, and you can still sort of give a complete demo, right? But that's ideally what we would like to see is that you are using the APIs, right? So in the sense that, see, any application, if you have an API and then your sort of functionality uses those APIs in order to actually implement certain things, that becomes in some ways, I don't know, a cleaner way of,
extendable way of using it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So, sir, we
yeah.
are allowed to use now like APIs for the core functionality also. We don't need to write a separate controller for core functionality.
Correct. We can do that too. Like you can just write the APIs and make the front end just use the APIs. That is also fine.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
See, there are many ways to do this, right? Like you can just do it completely without using APIs, just use regular controllers and, Jinja, or you could mix and match some parts of it. You could use, controllers and, other core parts. You could use APIs, or you could use all APIs and just front end. So all of these possibilities, and I think that part we should leave it to you how much you want to mix and match, and maybe you have your own logic why you did that way.
Okay, sir.
And yeah.
Okay. Next, Srivinay.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Just from my understanding about from the presentations, there's actually a progress for each card as well, and there's a progress for each deck, right?
Yeah.
And so is now once.
See, it's not so much. I mean, I wouldn't really call it a progress as such. It's just the sort of current rating on a card or a deck. In other words, I might find that, one word I mark it as easy one day, but maybe 1 week later when I get back to it and it shows me the card I have forgotten and I mark it as hard.
Yeah.
Right. So, rather than sort of worrying about, okay, have I made progress? I just sort of record the present state of the card or the deck. That is more useful.
So it's okay to just keep maybe like the deck itself as a easy, hard, or medium.
Well, no, I mean, I would
level,
like
or do you want it to be more of?
Yeah, at the card level, right? I mean, you should be able to do it at the card level, and then that's what I'm saying. So how you sort of calculate the score for a deck, is it just the average score across all cards in the deck? Something of that sort is up to you.
Okay. Also, there's also this last scene, right? So
yeah,
the last scene for each card and the last scene for each deck, right? So every time I open a deck and I want to go through a few set of cards, before I start looking at them again, there's one separate interface where it shows me the progress of the deck as well as the cards with the last scene.
So right? That's just the dashboard, which basically says, okay, for this deck, you had, this was the number of cards. This is the time you last tried this deck. That could basically be the last seen date of the, of all the cards in the deck, right? And you just pick the number from that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think don't worry about the history. I think if you try to keep the history of it, it becomes too complicated. Just keep the current status. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else? All right. So I think this was definitely a useful session. I think any other questions or anything else we can continue. I think many of you have already been bringing up questions on the discourse, and usually most of us are checking that as well, and we do respond over there also. So anything else you can bring it up on that, and I think that's basically it from our side at this point. Okay, Abhishek, is there anything else we needed to discuss? Otherwise, I guess we can end the session.
Someone has raised the hand, sir. I guess Sachin Sinha.
I think he had already asked. I am not sure. If you have another question, then go ahead. Otherwise,
no, sir.
yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah. So in case anyone has any queries, you can ask right now. But still, if you come across them later, you can post them into discourse. We'll try to respond there.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, do you have any recommendations on how we should score?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I just saw that question in the chat. No, I mean, short answer is no. The point is, if you look at how something like Anki does it, right? The point of a flashcard is not that, it's not like a quiz, right? It's not like you're trying to maximize your score and you're trying to, this is purely for your own satisfaction in some sense, right? So whether you mark a card as easy or difficult, the system is not going to, judge you on that. Let's say you actually got an answer wrong, but you still marked it as easy. It will accept it and say, okay, you think it was easy, fine, good for you. And, it will just update the last seen score as easy. That's in fact how Anki Web, for example, works, right? It's entirely up to you. You decide how you want to rate each card, and in turn what the system will do is it will sort of build some kind of an average score and say how it is going to decide which is the next card to display and so on. So yeah, we don't really have any recommendations on how you score. You can get quite creative over there if you want to, but like I said, that need not be at the cost of core functionality. That's all.
So on the card level, only easy, medium, and hard is getting recorded. Is that it?
Yeah. I mean, so if you look at Anki, for example, it has 4. It has something which is like you basically just didn't get the card at all, which means that it will reschedule it very soon, right? Probably within a few more minutes. Hard means that, you sort of got the answer, but it wasn't like coming clearly. So you want it to be rescheduled reasonably quickly, right? It might happen the same day or it might happen another day. Good usually means that, okay, it's rescheduled for another day, and easy means, this is a card that you have seen many times and you just want to sort of get rid of it. So that's up to you. That's Anki Web. There are other Ankis, there are other flashcard systems that use different scores, right? So this is just a recommendation that I gave, easy, hard, right? Just to go with a binary thing, or, easy, medium, hard, up to you. You can choose what you want.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. There's one more question. Prakhar.
So how can we take the flashcard? I mean, how can we insert the flashcard into the database? Do we have to take the YAML file and convert it into the DBMS format or something else?
No, the flashcards, just do a CRUD interface on it. Right? I mean, assume that flashcards are literally created by the users or something. So like I said, this taking a YAML file and so on will be something which is more in the import export kind of functionality, right? So if you have to read from a YAML file and get it into the database, then you have to be able to import cards, sort of. We are not looking for that, right? Because that can lead to a whole bunch of other problems, which, this sort of takes away from the focus of the project. So right now, just do a CRUD on the cards index.
Okay, sir. So we just have to take the CRUD and store it in the DBMS.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you, sir.
Sure. One more question from Sri Vinay.
Yes, sir. Actually, about the review card.
Yeah.
There's something between the front back, right? There's a review card which has both the front and the back.
No. I mean, what I meant was you are reviewing a card. So you first see the front. And so the review process, in other words, consists of the system will show you the front of the card and a link saying, show the back or show the answer. When you click on that, it will show you the back. And at that point, you sort of mark the score. Was it easy or hard? That is the process of review.
Okay. Okay.
So it's,
I thought
there's
there was
no
like a
separate
separate way
no,
that
there's
you
there's
can
no
just
other
review all the
review.
cards once. Okay.
No, nothing like
Thank you.
But generally, I think Anki is like an open source application, and it's also free. Maybe I think folks can just install, import like a card or create a card and try it out just to get an experience. You don't have to, borrow it from it, but you can just experience it to see how it works.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think especially, it generally seems to be useful for students, especially when you're learning and things of that sort. Yeah, and right now the reason why I came up with this is because I'm trying to teach my son Tamil, and it makes things easier.
So can we borrow aesthetics and look from Anki Web?
I think Anki Web's aesthetics are particularly good. They're fine, actually. Yeah, if you want to, that's perfectly okay. But yeah, see, if you are sort of borrowing from a specific place, then it's good to attribute it, saying that, this is what you got for the styling or whatever. But absolutely no compulsion. I mean, see, I think Bootstrap has already been covered in the screencast. So if you generally use something like that in order to style and, just make it look nice and display properly, that's more than enough. If you choose to sort of, get a similar kind of thing to what others have done, that's also fine. I mean, ideally then yes, just say, okay, this was the inspiration for your design or something of that sort. And yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, I think getting inspired is fine, but maybe not copy it completely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think a general recommendation always, right? I mean, if you do find that yes, some particular design looks nice, it's always good to attribute it. Say that, this is the origin for your design style, and yeah, you try to sort of get a similar look.
Yeah, I meant actually inspiring. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
I have one more question. So we have to incorporate the flipping animation, right?
No. You don't need an animation for that. I mean, it's a link that shows that basically says show the back of the card, right? So you could just say when you click on the link, it shows the new card, and or displays a new page which has the back.
You can do it in many ways. If you want to do animation, you can still do animation. And that's up to you. But Bootstrap has hidden alerts and stuff like that. You can say reveal back, and you can show like a pop-up to show the back. Or you can, Bootstrap also has a flip, so you can make it to flip the card. Or you can just show entirely completely new page if you don't want to do any of this JavaScript stuff. So again, there, I think it's up to you. That's part of your design. But basically, even if you want to flip the card or show the answer, like scroll up and show the hidden answer, it's still possible using Bootstrap. You don't have to do a lot of work to do it.
Okay.
So is it really necessary to make that box also? Because means I saw in some of the Flipkart application, it just in a page it shows the question, and then in the next it shows just the answer on the same page without making any box or as such.
Yeah. Core functionality does not require anything. I mean, I showed the box in that slide just to sort of show what is the outline of a card or something of that sort. In the actual app, you don't need it.
Okay.
That's it boils down, like Tej said. If you use Bootstrap, there are a number of things that you can add in that make it look nicer. But that's all. It's I mean, I'm not sort of trivializing aesthetics. Having a nice looking app is a big part of getting people to use your app. But it's not something that we can grade, at least not in a course like this. So yeah, we are not going to insist on that.
Okay.
All right. So I think it looks good. Thanks, everyone. And, of course, we are open to any other questions on this course. So feel free.
Thank you, sir. So thank you everyone for joining in this session. So still, if you have any queries, as I said, you can post it on the discussion forum and we'll try to respond as soon as possible. Okay. All right. Wish you all a good weekend. So bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.